Hello and welcome to Killing Time with Rashida. I'm your sweet and slightly stabby host, and there's been a murder in the motel room right next to ours, as a matter of fact. And I don't know, I really feel like we should knock on the wall between our room and theirs, just to let the victim and the killer know that we're here, in case they need anything at all. If you haven't watched it yet, that was a reference to End of the Road, starring Queen Latifah, Ludacris, Michaela Lee, and Sean Dixon, which is now streaming on Netflix. Now, I love Queen Latifah, and I don't know about you, but I'm always excited to hear about a new mystery or crime story that offers some diversity in themes and storylines and perspectives and characters. But by the time I sat down to watch End of the Road, it had an IMDb rating of 4.8, and over on Rotten Tomatoes, it had a 4.5 out of 10 from critics and a 1.5 out of 5 for viewers. I also saw a lot of negative takes on the film, so not looking good. Well, now I've watched the film for myself, and I initially planned to give a non-spoiler review followed by a spoilery review, but even if you haven't watched End of the Road, trust me, spoilers are not going to ruin the experience for you. So I'm going to share my thoughts, including whether I think the 4.8 rating is fair. And this is a spoiler alert because I don't think the 4.8 rating is fair. Then we're going to play a little game I call What Does Brenda Do? To sum up the film, recently widowed mom Brenda fights to protect her family during a cross-country road trip that becomes a highway to hell when a murder and a missing bag of cash make them the targets of a mysterious killer, and they're forced to fight for their lives all alone in the New Mexico desert. Let's talk first about what I enjoyed about this movie. The setup is great. You have mom Brenda and her two children, Cam and Kelly, and Brenda's younger brother, Reggie. And the personalities, the interpersonal relationships, and the dialogue between the characters was very well done. I'm a mom, I have two children and a younger brother who's like that cool uncle to them. And let me tell you, these characters felt so real and so relatable to me. And then there was something special between all of them. There was something special between Brenda and her brother Reggie, between Reggie and his nephew Cam, between Kelly and her uncle, between the siblings. And when you brought all that together, you had this fun, endearing, lovely family dynamic that I so enjoyed watching. In addition to that, the way the tragedy that this family has experienced, and in particular, the way it impacts Brenda, is so well laid out in the beginning of this film. By the time the opening credits began to roll, about 8 minutes in, I was genuinely on the verge of tears, and I was like, I don't know what's about to happen to this family. I don't know who's going to stalk and harass them, but I'm not having it. I will protect them at all costs. I also enjoyed the vibe of this film, the atmosphere, the settings, the places the family stopped along their journey, whether it was an odd wall drawing on the motel room or a cute garden attached to a burger shop. There was just something memorable about each setting. And then we were treated to these beautiful sweeping views of the desert, and I just love seeing landscapes and things like that in movies. And colors were worked into the sets via the lighting sometimes, and even the characters' hair and their accessories and their wardrobe. And it just gave the movie its own uniquely vibrant mood that I really appreciated. And then there was the soundtrack. And yes, we're moving into what I did not enjoy about End of the Road. The soundtrack was so-so. It started with a bang. When I said earlier that I was on the verge of tears in the first few scenes, some of that had to do with this song, Teleport by Etta Bond, that was playing. Hearing that over the scene was so compelling, like it yanked at my heartstrings hard, and I had to pause the movie and look up the song. It was just that impactful. But after that, I didn't really notice the music anymore, which is fine. It just kind of blended into the background. But in the final scene, As the movie ends, Good Day by Nappy Roots starts playing. No offense to the song, to its creators, or to its performers. This is not a criticism of the song itself, but rather of the decision to place this song, this particular song, in this particular movie, in that particular place. It reminded me of this video trend I've seen on TikTok that sort of parodies how Black drama films of a certain era often ended. And there would be this upbeat song, and one by one the characters would walk into the frame and then freeze, and there would be this text overlay explaining what happens to each of them after the story ends. And I don't know if this song is the audio for that video trend, but it could be. It felt dated, and it wasn't, it didn't strike the right note for the closing scene of a thriller movie. There were a few other nitpicky things that I really think are like par for the course for most like mid-level thriller movies. There were a few very obvious info dumps. There were corny one-liners. And then despite how much I loved the family dynamic, the children were a bit resentful of Brenda early on in a way that just wasn't believable when you understood the tragedy that this family had experienced. But the biggest critiques of End of the Road that I've seen seem to be that 1, the vast majority of white characters were ignorant and bigoted. 2, the social commentary is heavy-handed. And 3, the main characters made asinine decisions and basically invited the main danger of the film onto themselves. And I have to agree on all 3 points. And yet, as I alluded to earlier, I would rate this movie higher than a 4.8. I'd probably rate it a 6, maybe even a 6.4, not quite a 6.5, just to be difficult, because it is a hell of a movie, but definitely a 6 at least. And by the way, let me know in the comments if you've watched End of the Road and what you thought about it if you have. And if you haven't watched it, do you plan to watch it? So let's talk first about the white characters in this film. Let me preface my point by sharing that I am well aware that there are unfortunately many people like the characters depicted in this film that are walking around free as a kite in real life. I've had the not pleasure of meeting some of them. And yet I found myself giving this film the side eye a few times. There were white extras in the film and white characters that had like maybe 1 or 2 lines who were portrayed as civil human beings. But for the most part, Brenda and her family only encountered members of some like inbred backwoods militia group during this entire experience. And it left, it felt very heavy-handed and tropey to me. That being said, the way white characters are overwhelmingly portrayed in this film feels similar to the dozens of thriller and horror films in particular that I've watched over the years that have the same cinematic qualities of End of the Road and that offer up offensive, one-dimensional, cookie-cutter black characters. And to be clear, I'm not saying it's okay in one instance because it's done in another. Neither is okay with me. Then there's the social commentary. Basically, there's a scene early on where Brenda and her family are being run down on the road by these 2 guys who previously harassed Kelly, the daughter. Reggie wants to get out and confront them, but Brenda begs him not to because it will just escalate the situation. And then little Cam suggests that they call the police. And there's this moment of silence where clearly Brenda and Reggie consider dialing 911, but then decide against it for reasons that aren't spoken, but you can speculate. And later, when the identity of the ultimate villain in this story is revealed, the fact that neither Brenda nor Reggie felt safe calling the police is kind of driven home. And by the way, during that road assault scene, Brenda gets out of the car to beg these guys who are white to leave them alone. And after brandishing a rifle, they make her apologize for endangering their lives before they drive off into the sunset. And I got the sense as I scrolled through some of the individual ratings and reviews online that a number of the viewers who took offense to the social commentary and to the way that white characters are portrayed gave the film an automatic 1 or 2 stars. And hey, if somebody watches a film or even stops watching a film because they dislike it so much, I think they have a right to post their rating of it. But like I said, overall, I would not rate this film as low as a 4.8 or of course a 1 or a 2. Now, does that mean I think End of the Road is a great or even a good movie? No. But unless you take thriller films very seriously, it's a visually appealing, fast-paced, and thrilling piece of entertainment, but one that you will take pleasure in watching for all the wrong reasons, and I'm certain not the reasons that the creators intended. Okay, within any genre, movies range from corny or camp to elevated or highbrow, and End of the Road is just that campy type of thriller you watch if, like me, every once in a while you can appreciate a train wreck of a film that is so outrageous you simply cannot look away. Because this movie has no chill. It has no chill. The main characters are introduced, and then around minute 15, the level of bigotry and savagery that this family experiences on their journey just blows in at a level 10. And the only place to go from there is ridiculous. And that's exactly what this movie does. Just full throttle, nonstop ridiculousness from that point on. The characters may anger you or make you laugh at the stupid decisions they make, but that's how the story keeps you engaged, and you need to know how it ends. You laugh at it, not with it, and then you go to work the next day and tell your coworkers all the ridiculous details about it, or you talk about it on your YouTube channel. And that brings us to my final criticism of End of the Road, which is that Brenda and her family do everything that Black people have jokingly trolled white characters in thriller and horror films for doing for ages. And it was very painful to watch Queen Latifah, aka Brenda, make some of these decisions. So I decided to make the most of it, to turn this into something fun, since I just had a lot of fun laughing at this movie anyway. So it's time to play What Does Brenda Do? With your host Rashida. Welcome folks. You already know the rules and what's at stake, so let's jump right into round 1. When Brenda and her family stop over at a motel, around 4 a.m., the sound of thumping and shouting in the room next door wakes them. Reggie asks, "Are they having a party or something?" And we can forgive him because he apparently smokes a lot of cannabis. Besides, Kelly quickly chimes in with a voice of reason, saying, "No, it sounds like a fight." Mind you, prior to checking into this motel, Brenda's family was not so subtly warned that it wasn't safe for her kind to stay overnight in a nearby area, and they were nearly run off the road and murdered by a pair of deranged desert trolls. So what does Brenda do? Does she A. Whisper, "Kelly girl, shut that damn light back off and nobody make a sound"? Or B. Instruct everyone to get down on the floor in case something pops off? Now, if you picked A or B, not bad, but the correct answer is C. Brenda knocks on the wall between their room and the room where the potential danger is. If you didn't get that one, don't worry, because here's round 2. After she knocks on the wall to announce her family's presence to the assailant next door, Brenda picks up the phone to call the front office. Go, Brenda! But suddenly, the ruckus gets so heated that frames start falling off the wall. Yeah, in Brenda's room. So she hangs up the phone mid-ring and prepares to go next door because she's an ER nurse and she cannot let this go on. Then the sound of gunshots fill the night air. How fun! And look, there's the silhouette of the would-be shooter passing by the window of their motel room at this moment, and with the lights still on, sending a sweet message to the killer that we see you and we hear you. Cam and Kelly yell at the top of their lungs, "Mom! Mom, who is that?" Aw, kids, they yell when silence will do. Next, whoever is outside their room, the killer mind you, tries the handle of their motel room door. Then everything stops. So what does Brenda do? Does she A, push a table, chairs, whatever she can find up against that door and try to keep the killer from coming back and forcing it open? Does she B, grab the closest thing to a weapon she can find and keep watch in view of that window? Or does she C, quickly start packing and gathering everyone's things so that they can get the hell out of Dodge the moment the sun rises? Time's up. The correct answer is D. Brenda still goes out into the night to see what happened next door. You're doing grand. Look at that score. Time for round 3. Here's your next question. So it turns out someone was murdered next door, and Reggie discovers a bag of cash in the murder room that belongs to crime boss Mr. Cross. Of course, Reggie takes that bag of cash, and when the family is back on the road the next morning, Brenda gets her first call from the bad guys who want their money back. But Brenda doesn't even know this money exists. So what does Brenda do? Does she A, mute the call and ask, "Hey, does anyone know anything about this money I'm being accused of stealing? I don't know, maybe there was money related to this crazy motel murder we just witnessed and inserted ourselves into?" Or B, does she go back in time and not answer a call from an unknown number, because who does that anymore anyway? No, Brenda C is totally unbothered and says, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, but don't call me again. Okay, bye. I'm getting worried, but not for you, because this is our 4th and final round, and you still have a chance to win everything you see here if you get this one correct. Now, eventually, Reggie confesses to taking the money, and Brenda realizes that Mr. Cross ain't playing with her. So she devises a plan that involves reserving a room at another motel, leaving the bag of money in a closet, and placing the room key beneath the mat. Then she calls Mr. Cross to let him know where to find the money, and tells him to leave her family alone now. Now, what does Brenda do next? Does she A, pray all goes well and hightail it down the road in the direction of her destination? No food breaks, pee in a bottle if you have to, because we are not stopping again. Or does she B, hide out nearby where she can keep an eye on that motel room and do the best she can to protect that money until Mr. Cross gets it back? You know, since her life and the lives of her children sort of depend on Boss Man retrieving his blood money. Well, you're on a roll if you guessed that Brenda C takes her children down the road to Old Bravo, the tourist attraction where the Wild West never dies, and lets them both roam free with no supervision, because we're going to pretend that nothing that's happened in the last 24 hours actually happened. And Mr. Cross ends up kidnapping Cam because apparently a cleaner at the motel where Brenda left the money went into the room behind Brenda and stole the cash. So Mr. Cross didn't get his money back, and now he's holding little Cam for ransom. No one saw that coming. So remember, the next time you're in one of those high-octane thriller situations, ask yourself, what does Brenda do? Tell them what they win, Johnny.
You and your family get to remain alive.